Welcome to Ballacraine for the Manx Grand Prix Newcomers Race for 2018. Those of you who've watched the film No Limits with George Formby will know that this was the pub, which he went in the front door and out through the back. But fortunately, the pub was open. No longer, unfortunately, but had he done so, now the marshals that you can see lined up there would undoubtedly have rescued him. Anyway, the racing is about to get underway. Enjoy it. The early runners will become quite familiar to you as they tended to change places in the early laps. We start with Thomas Maxwell, number 1, on his Yamaha from Era, and he's followed by a local man, Nathan Harrison, number 5. He comes from Onken on the Isle of Man and he's riding a Suzuki. And there he is. And they're followed by number 19, Stephen Haddow. He's on a Kawasaki and comes from Kenaway. Coming up the road towards us now at a fast pace is number 14, James Field on a Kawasaki, representing Royal Air Force Motorsports. And he's followed by number 16, who comes from Switzerland, James P. Loud on a Suzuki. And they're followed by number 12, Arnie Shelton on his Kawasaki. The next pair of riders in close order, it's made up of Lloyd Collins on his Honda from Upfield, and then a Frenchman, Hervé Sampson, on his Yamaha, number 11. Another rapid trio made up of number 6, Alan Johnson from Northern Ireland on his Kawasaki, and he's followed by number 7, Ben Shuttlewood, who's riding a Triumph Daytona. And thirdly, number 17, Grant Gaskell, also on a Kawasaki. A quartet of riders now, the first of which is number 8, Andrew McAllister, riding a Suzuki. He comes from Bangor in Northern Ireland, followed by Barry Sheehan, number 22, who's actually the first of the B competitors. He's riding a Kawasaki from Era. Then number 3, Benjamin Plant, riding a Kawasaki. He's from Wem in Shropshire. And lastly, number 9, James Revelry from Carlisle, riding a Yamaha. The next pair of riders coming up quickly are David Murphy, number 15, on his Suzuki. He comes from Blackburn, and he's quickly followed by number 21, Daniel Fernandez, who comes from Colombia, riding a Kawasaki. He's a B rider. And then we have number 27, Yoshihiro Kishimoto from Japan, number 27. The closely riding pair coming up now are number 31, Samuel Booth on his Honda, he's from Derbyshire, and number 28, Michael Rees on his Kawasaki. He comes from Aberdare in South Wales. Snapping at their heels is the Kawasaki of Jack Fowler, number 33, from Stockton-on-Tees. Next we see Paul O'Rourke, number 24, riding his Kawasaki. He's from Niskeres in Era, and he's followed by number 25, James Hine, on his Honda. He's from Market Raisin. a little less frenetic now as we see number 32, Ray Maloney, passes on his Kawasaki. He comes from Alford, and he will be followed by another pair in closer order. Number 26 will be Daniel Capper, riding a Suzuki. He comes from Middlewich, which I think is in Cheshire. And number 10, Paul Fallon, riding a Yamaha. He comes from Ballyjames-Duff in Eire. And rider number 30, you will forgive my pronunciation, Veronika Hankasiova on a Kawasaki. She comes from Brno in the Czech Republic. Coming up the road now is James Buchanan on his Triumph Daytona, number 20. James comes from Northampton. And now we see an example of the marshals communicating with one another by line of sight. The marshal nearest to us will wave the yellow flag because a rider, James Smith, is apparently in trouble and will pull over to our marshalling station. James only lives just down the road at Glenvine, so he was pretty near to home. But although he got going again, I don't think he took any significant part in the race thereafter. James Smith finally struggles away, but I suspect that he knew in his heart of hearts that his race was run. When the riders pass us in lap 2, notice that the first two riders on the road have changed positions. Nathan Harrison, number 5 from Moncton, is now leading, and Thomas Maxwell, number 1, is in second position on the road. Third position on the road is now held by Stephen Haddow, number 19 from Fife in Scotland, on his Kawasaki. Maintaining his fourth position on the road behind Stephen Haddow is James Field, number 14, the RAF Motorsports representative. Also maintaining their positions of 5th and 6th on the road, on Pilaud, the Swiss, on his Suzuki, number 16, and Arnie Shelton, number 12, on his Kawasaki.
Pardon? Yeah, I can see.
In a moment or two, we shall see Lloyd Collins on his Honda, who's holding 7th position on the road. And then, after a short break, we shall see number 17, Grant Gaskell, on his Kawasaki, who's risen 4 places on the road. The rider next after Grant will be Hervé Sompson, the Honda rider from France. He's actually dropped 1 place on the road. He will now be in 9th position. Next we shall see riders 6 and 7, Alan Johnson on his Kawasaki and Ben Shuttlewood on his Triumph Daytona. They too have each dropped 1 place to 10th and 11th respectively. The next rider will be 12th position on the road, Andrew McAllister on his very smart Suzuki from Bangor in Northern Ireland. Next we shall see rider number 3, Benjamin Plant, and he's followed very closely by number 9, James Reveley. In fact, I was unable to take a still image of him other than his rear view. And behind those 2 riders is number 22, Barry Sheehan on his Kawasaki. The next 2 riders, again in close order, are number 15 David Murphy on his Suzuki and number 28 Michael Rees on his Kawasaki, the gentleman from Aberdare. The rider we shall see come through next is Daniel Fernandez, the Colombian rider, and then 4 riders jostling for positions, number 27, 25, 33, 31. Yoshihiro Kishimoto, James Hyde, Jack Fowler and Samuel Grief. Their positions changed even as I took my still photograph.
Oh my God. 27,
27, 25, 31 and 33.
After that little flurry, the riders are much more spaced out now. Next up will be number 24, Paul O'Rourke on his Kawasaki. A gap of almost 30 seconds before we see number 32, Ray Mahoney on his Kawasaki. Is that the last one? Next interview is number 26, Daniel Capper, on his Suzuki, and he will be followed in a brief while by number 10, Paul Fallon, on his Yamaha. I can hear Paul Fallon's bike in the distance, and he will be followed by number 30, Veronica, the young lady from the Czech Republic.
That was number 13.
Four goes through, I haven't got
The
four.
last one.
Four's retired.
Oh,
The last one was number 13.
I've got 9.
And number 10.
Pardon?
I've got 9 too.
You've got 9. I've got 20 I've got missing.
No, 20.
29.
James Buchanan, number 20, will conclude the runners and riders for this lap on his Triumph Daytona.
It's 29.
29 was the one who came in here.
That was 20 then.
29 was the one who came in here.
Three more stuff.
From Glenboy. So he might have stopped because his bike, I don't know if his bike was right.
Well, here we are at the start of lap number 3. Very little change from lap 2, in fact, other than we've lost our leader, number 5, Nathan Harrison, the chappie from Onken. And back in the lead is Thomas Maxwell, number 1. Here he comes. Because of the retirement of number 5, number 19, Stephen Haddow from Scotland, is in second place on the road.
Nothing else?
The gaps between the competitors are widening, and the third man on the road, number 14, James Field, the RAF Motorsport lad, is nearly a minute behind. Another 50 seconds before we see rider number 12, Arnie Shelton. but he's overtaken the Swiss rider John Pilaud, number 16. There's John Pilaud. Next along will be number 17, Grant Gaskell, on his Kawasaki, and he continues to make progress, having overtaken Lloyd Collins during the last lap. Lloyd is riding number 2. Here comes Lloyd Collins, number 2, and he will be followed by number 6, Alan Johnson, on his Kawasaki, who has made progress at the expense of the Frenchman Hervé Sompson on his Yamaha, number 11. So number 6 and number 11 will follow number 2. Andrew McAllister, number 8, and James Reveley, number 9, were also in close order there too. Next we shall see the Kawasaki's of number 22, Barry Sheehan, and number 3, Benjamin Plant. But Barry has actually overtaken Benjamin during the previous lap. Next along will be the Kawasaki of number 28, Michael Rees. He's moved up a place at the expense of David Murphy on his Suzuki, but following Michael Rees will actually be number 25, James Hind, who has also overtaken David Murphy, number 15. There's the Suzuki of David Murphy, number 15. He will be followed by number 33, Jack Fowler. Jack has progressed at 2 places at the expense of number 21, Daniel Fernandez, the Colombian, and number 27, the Japanese, Yoshihiro Kishimoto. But before we see Yoshihiro Kishimoto, in about 30 seconds time, we shall see number 31, Sam Grief, on his Honda. As we watch the picture there of number 27, Yoshihiro Kishimoto, we now await the arrival of number 24, Paul O'Rourke. There's a closer view of number 24, Paul O'Rourke, but it will be nearly a minute before Ray Maloney arrives on his Kawasaki, riding number 32. There is Ray Maloney on his Kawasaki, and he's leading Daniel Capper, number 26, on his Suzuki by the best part of a minute. So the gaps are widening as we come towards the end of the field. Daniel Capper hoves into view. Behind Daniel are number 10, Paul Fallon on his Yamaha, and behind him is Veronica from the Czech Republic, who is progressing very steadily on her Kawasaki, riding number 30. Finally, we see James Buchanan, number 20 on his Triumph, who was some 3 minutes behind Veronica. Nevertheless, he was still there. As you saw from my header, we're now into the final lap, and the first two riders through, Thomas Maxwell number 1 and Stephen Haddow number 19, are as they were on the third lap, and that is actually the way they finished on the podium. Thomas was first and Stephen was second, and we're awaiting the arrival of the third rider, number 14, James Field, and he too ended up in bronze medal position on the podium. He will be along in a few moments. There we see a clearer picture of number 14, James Field, the third placed man, and he will be followed by number 12, Arnie Shelton, who is fourth on the road and was also the fourth at the checkered flag at the end of the lap. And Arnie will be followed by number 16, the Swiss rider, John Piloud, who will not be fifth when it comes to the final reckoning, because that honour goes to Grant Gassel, number 17, who actually followed him on the road but was riding with a lower number. Remember that a unique feature of races on the TT course, be that the Manx Grand Prix, the TT or the Classic TT, they are a time trial, man against the course. And that stood the test of time, well over 100 years. Finally we see number 12, Arnie Shelton, and hard on his heels is number 16, John Piloud. And then a short wait before we see number 17, Grant Gaskell. The next two riders after Grant Gaskell will be number 9, James Reveley, who will be 7th at the checkers flag, and he will be followed by rider number 8, in position number 8, Andrew McAllister. Three riders in very close order now. Number 2, Lloyd Collins, who finished 11th. Number 11, Hervé Sampson, the Frenchman, who finished 10th. And lastly, number 6, Alan Johnson, who finished 9th. Three more riders will be with us shortly. Another feature of these long races is that races develop within races, where a group of riders can actually vie with one another without necessarily seeing the riders well ahead of them or the riders behind them having a view. And these three are having a go. The first is Barry Sheehan, number 22, who will end up first in Newcomers B race, followed by Michael Rees, number 28, who will be third in Newcomers B race, and lastly number 3, Benjamin Plant, who will be 12th in Newcomers A. The sound of Benjamin's bike recedes into the distance as he negotiates Milky's corner, named after Milky Quayle, who had an accident there a few years back, but fortunately still plays quite a part in organising things. And he is being followed by James Hurd, who will actually be on the podium in second place in Newcomers B race. And he will be followed by number 15, David Murphy, who is 13th overall in race A. David is followed by the 4th and 5th place men at the grandstand in race B, number 33 Jack Fowler and number 21 Daniel Fernandez, the Colombian, on his Kawasaki. Next up is rider number 31, Samuel Grief, who passed us at this location, but was marked as a non-finisher, so wasn't registered at the grandstand, presumably with technical trouble. And behind him will be number 27, Yoshihiro Kishimoto, who was 6th in race B. There's Yoshihiro Kishimoto, the Japanese rider, and he will be followed by Paul O'Rourke, number 24, who finished 7th in race B. Paul there will be followed by number 32, Ray Maloney, on his Kawasaki. Ray finished 8th in Newcomers Race B. The earlier riders are, of course, being welcomed at the grandstand, which is what one can hear in the background. But our riders are still hard at it, and we await the arrival of Ray Maloney. There we see Ray, and he will be followed by number 26, Daniel Capper. Daniel's riding his Suzuki, and he was recorded in 9th position at the grandstand in Newcomers Race B. As we see the shot there of Daniel Capper, we now have only 3 riders to pass our viewing point at Ballacraine. The first of these will be Paul Fallon, number 10, who was 14th on the leaderboard in race A. And then we shall see our favourite, number 30, Veronika Hankachiova, the young lady from the Czech Republic, and she registered 10th in Newcomers Race B and received a replica, as did the other riders in the race.
You say 20, Cal? 20.
We now await the arrival of the last man on the road, James Buchanan, on his Triumph. He will be placed 15th in Newcomers Race A. Hats off to him. He stayed the course, and I'm sure he'll be back next year with this experience behind him. Well done, James.
God bless them, 20.
Unfortunately, the broadcast of the public address system from the grandstand wasn't really clear enough for me to pick it up on my camera microphone, so you'll no doubt be content with the results that I've listed at the end of this little film, which I hope you've enjoyed, and I'm sure you will enjoy listening to the national anthem to conclude proceedings for the morning.